Hello everyone, welcome to my watercolor painting channel, and on today's tutorial we're painting this card with a snowman. I've attached my paper. I'm using Arches 300 GSM cold press paper, and I'm attached it to the board using masking tape, and now I'm applying an even layer of water using my brush size number 10, and I'm avoiding placing any water to the foreground and to the snowman. So when I'm getting closer to these areas, I am only using the tip, and it's very important to place an even layer of water without dry patches. And then immediately after placing water, I am gonna start working with color, and I will use my brush size number 6, and I would use Ultramarine and Intense Blue, and I will be applying it wet on wet. So to create this contrast, we need quite a lot of that color, so don't be shy and add more and more saturated colors wet on wet. The main aim is to keep the area wet throughout our process of adding water and color, and don't have any dry patches because we're going to be adding salt at the end. And what I also did is I placed quite a lot of color, very saturated ultramarine, right next to my white snowman. And then next step, I'm just sprinkling some Himalayan salt on damp paper using just my finger. I do recommend using dry salt, so don't use Celtic salt. So it's any coarse but dry salt will do. And then allow it to dry fully before you clear it from salt. And then we're gonna paint a scarf, so I will be using cadmium red deep hue, and it's gonna be quite saturated with color, so make sure that you mixed enough to cover the area and it's very vivid. And I'm using my brush size number 6 to apply it wet on dry. To paint the nose, I'm using cadmium orange hue and I'm applying it wet on dry with my brush size number 3. My next step, I will be using combination of Payne's grey and intense blue with plenty of water, so make sure to keep that mix very diluted with water. And we're going to be painting shadows, and I'm using my brush size number 6 for that, and we're painting wet on dry. I even had just a touch of raw amber, so that brown color just in some places to create nice contrast and a different temperature on the snow. I dropped just a little bit more of Payne's grey to that mix and painted shadow under the snowman. And then with the same brush, but a very light mix of this color, so you can see it's a lot lighter, I'm just placing some shadow on a snowman. It's almost transparent, so make sure to experiment on the paper how it will look like, not to overpower the snowman with really dark shadows. Now it's the turn to paint branches, and I'm using concentrated lamp black. So how to make it? So you grab that lamp black with almost no water, and then you mix a very concentrated color and then add just a little bit of water and keep mixing it. That way you will end up with very saturated black color. And I'm applying it wet on dry with my brush size number 3. I'm also going to be using that color to add buttons and to place eyes and a mouth for my snowman. With the mix of cadmium red deep hue and ultramarine, we're gonna add shadows to the scarf, and I will be applying all the details wet on dry with my brush size number 3. And my last detail is that I decided to add a hat just because the background really went on the snowman, and I decided just to use lamp black and to place that really dark hat wet on dry, and I'm still using my brush size number 3. With the mix of intense blue and Payne's grey with plenty of water, I'm adding some details to the head using my brush size number 3, wet on dry. And then I will add some details to the scarf, and I'm using a mix of Cadmium Red Deep Hue and Ultramarine, and I'm using super tiny brush, so this one is 20. And now my card is complete. It's simple yet very effective Christmas card. I hope that you enjoyed watching this tutorial. If you would like to see more, subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Bye!